Hello?
Hey,
Okay,
um,
so did you do any stuff since last time?
um, the post 2FI and things are probably sort of it. Um, I don't know. I let myself get distracted on a whole bunch of, well, on other fronts as well, not just like other stuff that I was planning on doing. Um, as in not just the like grammar stuff and other things we talked about at the end of the last session. Um, yeah. Um,
Okay, so are you having issues with the scheduling and motivation stuff that we talked about like a week or so ago?
um, so I mean, if there's an issue with like, so sort of, but a very different problem, I guess. In that. Uh, like so I mean the reason that I'm like was sleeping was because I've like offset my sleep schedule by like more than 6 hours or something um in a like in a weird way. I'm finding that like most of my time I'm spending like reading stuff or thinking about somewhat related things. Like I mean nothing that I posted was particularly related to things we've been talking about. But but that's like yeah, most of my time has been spent doing that, I guess. So, uh, yeah, so like scheduling is an issue only because I've um like been spending such a more time than I anticipated, um, and late into the night.
Yeah, I saw the FI posts a bit. I didn't read carefully, but my general impression is people overestimate how productive those sorts of things are, especially compared to
Mhm.
other things like going through educational videos and or reading books.
Yeah. Um,
There's a trend there, like lots of other people also seem to enjoy similar activities for some reason.
um,
Did you see my reply about the physics stuff?
no, I mean, yeah, I've literally been awake 15 minutes, so I see there is a reply.
Yeah, we could talk about that for a minute. It's only like a one sentence response.
This is I don't understand the issue. Answer email had four attributions at the top, in
Oh,
the
it's
row at
a
the top.
different email. I just
Oh, sorry.
asked what you think a quote universe is.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I see that. Um, so uh, I'm not sure. Like, what I would say, that's a stupid way to start. What I thought before this was, like, so all of the space-time connected to like a reality or a thing or whatever else. Like, if you started a from the point that we're in now, and then moved like in any direction, anything you could reach would be in the same universe. Um, I don't know if going like following a path backwards through time and then forwards through time in a different direction or whatever else. Like if you can get back to something like the Big Bang and then move forward in any direction, you can obviously get much further than we could move between any 2 points with a speed of light restriction. Um,
Okay, well,
there,
what David says a universe is a region of the multiverse which is approximately autonomous in terms of information flow. So
Yep.
within this region, there is lots of information flow, and between this region and other parts of the multiverse, there's very little information flow.
Yep.
So under this view, the stuff you're talking about like how many universes are there and could everything sort of fit in one universe, I think doesn't make a lot of sense.
Um,
There's universes are not a fundamental thing. They're just a categorization of chunks of the multiverse. It is fundamentally one large thing.
uh, yeah, I mean, I guess part of the reason that I asked the question was because there's this, so if you imagined that the universes are, um, I mean, the reason I said a weird definition before is in part because um, don't know how to factor in all the weird stuff about it. So, um, I think I imagined, and most people imagine that these things are separate and on top of each other almost. I think there's actually like a line in when he's talking about like photons hitting a bit of wood, I think, and interfering, and whether there was one photons or many photons, or whether they hit one bit of wood or many bits of wood, um, or something like that. Might be around that sort of thing. But um, yeah, I think people tend to imagine like them laying on top of each other, um, and
Right,
not
that's not
being
a very good picture of it.
no, okay. But uh, yeah, no, it sort of sounds like the way Deutsch has defined it, it's doesn't really matter whether the universes are sort of like different regions of the same space-time, again, whatever that means, versus like different fungible space-times. I mean, yeah, words like different space-times sort of lose meaning if you can't ever move between them anyway. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there are like different space times really. Like, I think the same space can be reused for different multiversal objects. Like, they're in the same place and they just some of them interact with each other and some don't.
Um, yeah,
So
I mean, same
you don't
place.
need like a different universe in a different place with its own space time over there.
Well, the so in the case of like having different space times, then it's sort of like it's not that there's like a relativeness between the places, like within each universe when they like interfere. Um, um, as in there's no like, invisible fifth dimension by which you can, you know, transition through the universes or whatever, right? Um, yeah, I guess so the another way to ask the question that I was thinking of in the post is that if you created two very small isolated areas of space-time, like in a quantum computer, um, how you like in the way that you isolate that from the rest of space-time. Um, if you created these two small bubbles and had the same initial conditions in them, would they interfere with each other despite being in places that we can readily say, like one is here and the other one is a meter to the right? Um,
You mean if they came in contact with each other, what would happen?
no, 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 as in the fact that they're not in contact with each other. Um,
Well, physics is local. They only interact if they come in contact with each other or some third thing contacts one and then the other.
um, so What was Deutsch's definition of a universe?
A region of the multiverse with information flow that's approximately autonomous.
Sorry if you said anything just then. I just pulled out my headphones
Oh,
immediately as I asked what
it's a,
Deutsch's.
yeah, it's a region of the multiverse which is approximately autonomous or independent, and which has information flowing freely.
Yeah, okay. So, um, if we, well, I guess the regions aren't autonomous or independent, really. We could sort of like try and
Oh,
argue that
well,
for a
if you
small.
make like small regions, they still have the capability of having information flow with, the rest of the lab or the building next door or
Y-
whatever. Just because they're
Yeah,
currently isolated doesn't prevent that capability.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, so the reason I brought this up is I think it's an example where the main issue is just understanding the MWI view more, and it would be more productive to focus on studying physics in the usual way of like learning how it works rather than this kind of speculation.
yeah. It occurs to me as well. I mean, I think in the email I said something about the BOI point of view, and I sort of Googled the conformal thing, uh, to refresh my memory a bit, but I could have just like read the BOI chapter again at the very least, which might have
Yeah,
been
the
enough.
the concept of a universe is in BOI,
Yeah. Um,
and
so it makes sense.
it's also the kind of thing that experts have already considered in general. Like it takes a lot of knowledge to add something actually useful to the field. It takes substantial background knowledge even to know what might be useful or what problems are worth working on or what's already been considered.
Yes, yeah. Um, that's a good way to put it. Like, yeah, as in the amount of knowledge to know like what is actually useful at all, or where that usefulness is. I don't know how to, uh, yeah, the area that it needs to be created in, sort of thing. For something like this is not a trivial problem. Um, like just as a comparison idea, like the thing about Tourette's that I posted. Um, I think it's probably much easier to like they're sort of interesting in that two different things where very little is known about one and a huge amount is known about the other. I'm not sure if there's any actual interesting things about that comparison, but yeah,
Yeah, with Tourette's, the appropriate starting point is to understand Szasz and the purpose of psychiatry and the history of the field, and like what kind of field it is, what kinds of things it does, and why, and then to look at the phenomenon through that lens, and then to look for documented evidence of anything that would not fit that lens and whether there might be something more to it other than excuses for social control, types of nonconformity that people complain about, etc. Because as a
um,
first approximation, it just looks like people are doing behavior which violates social norms, and in general, that's nothing special or notable.
um, yeah, no, I mean that in and of itself, I mean, yeah, it's I don't know, I'm not obviously
Yeah.
not much of an
So
expert, but that
if you want to say that there's something more to it, the appropriate starting place, I guess, is to understand a lot of things where there isn't something more to it. Like what is the common scenario? Like why is schizophrenia a myth, for example, or paranoia
Mhm.
or whatever? Like, if you could say that you understand why 10 of them are myths, but you think this one is actually there's something more going on, uh, after analyzing it with the same methods that revealed other ones as myths, like ADHD. then then you would start to have something, and you would have to find specifically what pieces of evidence are documented that show there's some other aspect to it.
Um, yeah, okay. So as an example of something that might show that there's an aspect to it, um, uh, so generally speaking, I think, or there's sort of an implication that placebo stuff is not very effective. Um, but so a few people like have had uh, an operation where they basically stick electrodes in your brain and I don't know, zap bits. Um, and that seems to then not have too much personality change or things like that or other side effects, but their tick stop. That's like a physical thing. Um,
Yeah, so there's a lot of problems there. Like, how did they decide that personality didn't change that much? Like, how did they decide that they didn't screw up anything else? I'd be very
they
skeptical of their evaluations of that.
they don't know and they don't know exactly where to put it. They just have like the sort of like loose ideas, and some people agree on where those points are. Um, there was a phrase like, while there's not consensus, most blah think this part of the brain is the right thing to zap, um, which is pretty poor as far as like explanation goes. Um, but I'm not sure if it like demonstrates something by the uh like the people who, you know, have severe diagnoses of this.
Yeah,
Like
before
there's
even getting into
pronounced
that,
change.
I would consider if the so-called scientists doing the brain zapping and looking into this whenever, like, are they actually scientists? Are they actually doing truth seeking? Or are they social controllers making excuses for authorities to do what they want to? Because you can't trust them in the second case, like, at all. Like, scientists screw up enough, but when people aren't even acting as scientists, it's much worse.
Um, yeah, I don't know enough, but I do know that like adults consensually want this. Apparent, I mean, as far as I can
Yeah,
tell.
but
Um,
that comes up with all sorts of so-called mental illnesses. Like, sometimes the victims are persuaded of the standard perspective. You know, like with so-called depression.
hmm. Um,
It's very common that people like want help for their depression and say that their drugs worked and like report that it didn't. It seemed to work in a targeted way where it didn't like change their personality. It just solved their problem and did nothing else. And they'll say things like that. It's fairly typical, but it doesn't make it true.
no, yeah, yeah, no, I agree. Um, um,
Anyways,
yeah,
when you try to look into these things, the more skill you have before at the start, the more efficiently you will be making progress on them.
mm,
So the earlier you do them, like the more expensive they are, the more resources you have to pay for the same results. And I think that model understates the problem because it doesn't pay a lot of attention to error and failure, which are major obstacles. It's not just resources to reach a certain level of success. It's also, you know, might do the wrong things and just not be productive at all.
yeah, yeah. Um, so one thing that is, uh, so I guess in some ways, like I'm not sure if you, have that email there. It's sort of, oh, I know, I've got it in the background there. Where is it? So, oh, I made the subject sort of off the point. That was, maybe not the best subject line, but the a sort of like, I guess, recognize. So, I mean, in the thing, I sort of mention that, uh, oh yeah, like the second line, like is about coming up with an experiment. That's the goal, even if the idea, like I sort of, I guess, I don't know about particular technique, but I tried to come up with a test, and so I sort of consider the experience a success, or I say I consider it a success regardless of how good the idea is. Um, I don't know if the whole thing was a waste of time, I guess. Um, like,
Like, waste is a strong word, but I don't think it's
yeah,
efficient. But
hmm,
it's not like zero value either. Anyway, we're out of time.
yeah,
Um,
yep.
so do you want to stick to the regular schedule for 2 days from now, your Friday, my Thursday?
Um, yeah, that's probably good. I mean, considering I haven't really done much on the grammar stuff, it's sort of like I'm not sure what an alternative would be. No, I think that's fair. It's yeah, let's stick to that schedule.
Okay. So you'll try to work on some grammar stuff for them?
Yep. No, I'll do that and fix my sleep schedule.
Okay. Good luck.
All right, cool. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.